It's time. Let's talk about the divorce. So I've been away for quite a while. Let me tell you why. At this point, the case is over. I've been trying to get this divorce settled. It was a lot longer process than I thought, and I haven't talked about it in any official way up until this point. There's two different courts. There's the court of public opinion, that is Reddit, Twitter, all those great and wonderful places. And then there's the court of law, where I believe that was the best place to spend most of my time and focus most of my efforts. After it was settled, then we could talk about it. We could dispel any rumors or any sort of questions people had. And that's who this video is for. It's for people who genuinely are curious about what happened. I have documents here in front of me. I'm gonna read them as they are. I'm gonna try my best to not have any of my opinions in here. Some of these things are a bit confusing for people who don't know lawyer speak. So I'm gonna do my best to explain these documents in a more casual way. So hopefully everyone can understand them. Keep things as plain as I can. This isn't to inflame the situation or cause any stress to anybody whatsoever. I just want to speak the truth, finally. So I want to do my best to provide an accurate timeline of what happened. The divorce was filed by Milena in January of 2025. We had split up the previous year. It was amicable. We tweeted about it on Twitter. Everyone saw that. And the divorce ended up being officially filed by her in, like I said, January. I sent Milena a 50-50 offer down the middle in April of that year. She did not accept it. I did not know what she wanted out of this divorce until mediation, which was actually in November. And essentially what she wanted was the same thing she wanted in trial, and that's what we have here. I warned Milena that trial would be very expensive. It would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, but still we had to go to trial, and you'll see why. So bear with me now. We are gonna go into some legal documents. What I have here is what they call Milena Midtoy-Palom's First Amendment disposition of issues. So this is essentially what she wanted. I'm gonna read the document to the best of my ability because I can't read very well, but I'm gonna explain things so everyone can kind of understand what she wanted and how it went down. Keep in mind.
Now this is already crazy when you think about this, right? From the information we know already, they, I guess, agreed. They said, you know, we are going to get divorced. He says that she officially proceeded with the divorce, and then from that perspective, he's like, look, well, my offer was let's just do 50-50 straight down the middle. Now, that makes a lot of sense when you think about what he said so far, unless we're missing something drastically from this equation, which is possible. But based on what he said so far, if the two of them have amicably said, we are going to part ways. He mentioned that they posted it on Twitter, so they posted it on socials saying, you know what, they're going their separate ways and everything's cool. They're going to be like working it out in their own way. If that is actually true, why is the 50-50 not being pronounced? Now, again, let's just listen to what he's going to say next, because this is already seeming like a very much like a train wreck. Let's continue.
We each had this. This one's hers. This one's mine. We'll go over mine, but first let's do hers. Hers is a bit longer. The first thing she wanted, and by the way this works is it's essentially a line with a, like for a check mark and then the thing that they wanted. So the first thing that she wanted was to grant the divorce between the parties on the grounds of insupportability. This is very important, and I'm gonna explain exactly what that means right now. In Texas, a divorce can be granted on the grounds of insupportability, which is the state's no-fault divorce ground. The Texas Family Code defines insupportability as a conflict or discord of personalities between the spouses that destroys legitimate ends of the marriage relationship and prevents any reasonable expectation of reconciliation. In practical terms, it means neither spouse has to prove wrongdoing, no evidence of adultery, cruelty, abandonment, or other fault is required. The court only needs to find that the marriage has become unworkable and that reconciliation is not reasonably expected. So
now, before we continue, right, he's making some of these faces, so it's leading me to believe there's much more to the story that's actually there. But just think about this for a second, right? He's already said he was willing to agree to 50-50. If they're both agreed, if they're both like, yes, we're going to part ways, especially based on this first point, let's come to the table and let's make the divorce officially sound like, well, no one was at fault. Okay, so if she wants to come to the table and say, well, nobody's at fault, why wouldn't 50-50 make the most sense? unless she's trying to give up more of her share, which I doubt that's obviously the case. But this is one of the reasons why, before we continue, you have to realize this is why the Bible says, God says he hates divorce. You have to be mindful of who you select as a life partner, right? And this is the problem. Like, I've been married, right? My wife and I've been married for over 13 years, right? We've got 6 children together, and we didn't just think about making the decision for today or for the next year or the next week. We're looking at this down the road, right? We took our vows seriously till death do us part. If you aren't thinking in that way and your potential spouse isn't thinking in that way, you don't need to get married to that person because they're not ready for what God actually intended for a marriage. Let's see what's going to happen here.
You can file divorce on other grounds, and I'll explain what those are. Cruelty. You can file for adultery, which didn't happen. Conviction of a felony, abandonment, living apart, etc. She filed on the grounds of insupportability. Next, award Milena Midtoy.
Just so you catch that as well, that just makes you see that she's not saying he did any of the other things. So he didn't commit adultery, he wasn't cruel or anything along those lines. That's what that would lead you to believe.
Palm a disproportionate shares of the party's estate for the following reasons, including but not limited to. So she wanted more than 50-50. Respondent's economic and financial abuse of the petitioner, respondent's failure to permit access to the party's community property accounts, including for purposes of insight and access to such community funds, benefits the innocent spouse may have derived from continuation of the marriage, disparity of earning power of the spouses and their ability to support, earning power, business opportunities, capacities, and the ability of the spouses, nature of the property involved in the division, waste, and attorney's fees to be paid. So to explain that, the judge, in order to grant Milena her disproportionate share, would have to find something that fits those sort of grounds, any of those bullet points that I read off. Next, confirmation of Milena Midtoy's separate property as outlined in the attached spreadsheet, meaning that there's an attached spreadsheet here that has her own property in it. Makes sense. Next, order Milena Midtoy Palm's waste claim for Nicholas Michael Palm's excessive expenditures. That was over $100,000 they had claimed against me. The next thing she wanted, and this is one of the reasons why we had to go to trial, order Milena Midtoy Palm's request for post-divorce maintenance for a period of 5 years from February 1st, 2026 in the amount of $5,000 a month. So she wanted me to pay her $5,000 a month for 5 years. We don't even have kids.
You know why this is crazy, right? I'm still caught on the fact that he said she wanted, her first point was, let's divorce under the grounds that we are, basically, there's no one at fault. So again, guys, if nobody is at fault, why did she not accept the 50-50? Well, we know why now. We're hearing more of this stuff. She wants all of this different stuff. She's saying what, he wasted money. She's saying that he was, I guess, stingy with finances and all these different kind of things. All the stuff she's gonna have to prove, obviously. And she needs $5,000 a month for the next 5 years, even though she's the one that's filing for divorce. Even though she's the one saying, let's say this is on mutual grounds, there's nobody at fault. This is crazy. This is why I'm just thinking about how the Proverbs talks about beware of the strange woman. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Next, and this was the biggest one, the most important one, and it's going to take some time to explain it because this is also why we really had to go to trial. Order Milena Midtoy Palm be granted a judgment against Nicholas Michael Palm with specific language securing such entrance against the shares and stock held by Nicholas Michael Palm with his interests in OTK Ventures, OTK Media, and Kings Gaming Labs Incorporated. So this is essentially the crux of the entire trial. I mentioned earlier that Milena wanted a disproportionate share of the estate. She wanted a 60-40 split of the entire estate, but it was a little bit more complicated than that. What she wanted to do essentially was have her 60% be all cash and my 40% be heavily weighted in my OTK shares. She wanted about 90% of the cash reserves, plus she wanted me to pay her this post-divorce maintenance, and my 40% would be essentially all in my OTK shares, which no one really knows what those are worth. This was the biggest point of contention in the trial for me. I don't think anyone would have accepted the offer that was presented in front of them. Essentially, it would drain me to 10% cash reserves, be in debt a whole bunch of money. So I would put a lot of trust in those OTK shares being worth something someday. So That is just about half of the document, and I don't know if I should say this, but now it gets kind of funny, and I'm gonna explain to you why. Up next is a section called income taxes, and let me read this for you. Order that any refunds received from the date of marriage through the date of divorce be divided equally by the parties, with Milena Midtoy being entitled to 50% and Nicholas Michael Pollan being entitled to 50%. So if there was a tax refund, she would get half of it, I would get half of it. Makes sense, right? Order any liability from the date of marriage to the date of divorce be paid solely by Nicholas Pollan. So if there was a tax bill, I would have to pay for all of the taxes. But if there's a refund, Milena would get half of it. Order that the parties file separate tax returns and partitions as January 1st, 2026, and each party be liable for their own respective taxes for 2026 and each awarded respective returns for 2026. Makes sense to me. Up next, injunctions. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing. I'll try my best to explain it for everyone. Order Nicholas Michael Pollan be restrained and enjoined from making any public statements, whether written, verbal, or visual, regarding the ongoing litigation and the parties' divorce, unless mutually agreed upon in writing by the parties and filed within the court. So that essentially says that me, and you notice her name's not there, but me and me alone can't talk about it.
So she wants to, just to keep this simple, she wants to take, as you said, the majority of his liquid cash, right? And if you want to say, right, at this point, like if they're still married, she wants to take the majority of their liquid cash, leave him with a certain amount of reserves, right? Limited cash. And also take some of his stock or take some of their stock. And he has to have a gag order he can't say anything about, which is crazy. And if any of the stuff that he's saying is true in this video so far is true, it makes sense why she wants to silence him, because anybody who hears this story, right? I don't know much about this story other than what we're hearing right now, right? But anyone who can just listen to some of the details, if what this guy's saying is true, this is crazy. This is why, guys, number one, I mentioned it already. You have to really choose the person you are going to spend the rest of your life with. Take that decision very seriously. And the other thing you need to think about is this is why marriage is such a, how can I put it? You need to make sure, right? You don't want to get divorced. Divorce is a headache. Look at what this guy's talking about. You've been building your life with, I don't know how long they've been married for. You've been building your life for X amount of years. And now you are about to lose at least 50% of the wealth that you've acquired, the wealth that you've been able to build. This doesn't make sense. I'm not one of those people that's against marriage, quite the opposite, right? I'm for marriage. But you have to be wise when it comes to making these decisions, because this is not the kind of thing that you want to do. This is not the kind of thing you want to be in where you're getting divorced. Guys, let me know if you want me to continue with this story, because I'm about all tapped out for now. Don't forget to subscribe and like it. And as always, don't forget to react righteously. God bless.